Hello, hello, everybody. We are going to get started. We're going to let some folks come in. People are coming from the waiting room. We're going to jump right in. Feel free to have your camera on, off, whatever makes you comfortable. We'll have time at the end if you've got questions. Um, but Brendan and I are also totally open to questions as we go. So either raise your hand, because when we're presenting, we won't be able to see. But raise your hand, drop something in the chat. One of us will see it. We want to make sure this is useful to you. Our overall plan is going to be about 20 minutes of a presentation, so you can get a really good idea of the Dimensions tool. Brendan is going to do a live demo as well, so you can see it in action. So please feel free to pop on, ask questions, but we do have some time at the end for dedicated questions. We are so glad you're here today. As I think we've got everyone we were expecting, I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right. So here's our team. It's educators serving educators. We are all coming from an education background, and we really believe in the power of engagement work as a way to not only support our teachers the best way we can, but to make sure every student has a high quality, engaging, excellent academic experience in your school. We are a nonprofit arm of the Wellington School. So everything we do, we test here at the Wellington School. And our teachers and administrators really give us the feedback to make these tools excellent. And we are really excited to bring you into that work today. Our goal for our 30 minutes today is we're going to give you a brief touch of how Dimensions fits into our Wellington engagement data ecosystem. Some of you on our call are our current partners, and so you are very familiar with the Wellington Engagement Index. But if you are not familiar with that, we want to make sure that you understand how this tool fits in. We'll give you an overview of the tool and its structure. Brendan is going to give us a live demonstration of both the student-facing tool and our teacher and administrator dashboards. Just like the index, what really you're going to see, I think, hit home today is the simplicity of the tool, your immediate access to the data, and the wide-ranging ways you can interact with the data, which I think you will find to be a really helpful asset in managing your academic programs. So let's jump right in. So first, we're going to talk about where does Wellington Engagement Dimensions fit in this overall data ecosystem. So if you are familiar with us, you know our main tool is the Wellington Engagement Index. This measures engagement at the intersection of love and challenge in our 4 quadrants: high love, high challenge, engaged; low love or hate, depending on how your school approaches that; high challenge, that's the grind; low love, low challenge, that's bored; and high love, low challenge is entertained. So think of that as your check engine light, your high level look at engagement. You're getting that pulse, right? That frequent, quick pulse of how students are experiencing the engagement in their classrooms. The Wellington Engagement Dimensions are a detailed look at engagement. And our driving question is, how can we make this idea of engagement, love and challenge, how can we deepen that and also make it really actionable and coachable so that we're breaking it down into components that a teacher could focus on in order to build the strongest classroom they can. So that driving question that we're going to talk about today, why we design dimensions, is once we understand engagement, how can we intentionally increase it? So now let's get in. So we sort of understand how it fits in, that it's this deep dive into engagement. It supplements and plays well with the Wellington Engagement Index. So we're getting that high level and detail level. What our middle school principal at Wellington likes to say is that check engine light, bringing the car into the shop. Now that we kind of understand those dynamics at play, let's understand the foundations of the tool. So the dimensions is going to break down your different areas of engagement, so behavioral, cognitive, emotional, and instructional, into these individual components for teacher approaches, moves, mindsets, and they're all clear and actionable. And they are organized by these types of engagement. I love this quote. If you have not read this article, this is an oldie but a goodie. I think it came out in 2012 by this surgeon, Dr. Atul Gawande, who wrote an article called "The Coach in the Operating Room." And it reminds me a lot of our teachers, just really excellent at what they do, but he was finding without consistent feedback, he wasn't growing as a surgeon, and actually his complication rate was soaring. And what he did was he invited a coach into his operating room to get that immediate feedback on his surgical practice. And then he ended up kind of moving beyond what he thought he was capable of. And that's what I think Dimensions can do for teachers, right? It serves as this data coach that can really break down their performance into these individual components. Not only is that helpful to you as a supervisor, a teacher leader, an instructional coach to be able to see teaching and learning on this level, it's also really helpful to them because it builds agency. So they can say, oh, you know what? I'm really, like if we look at this one, the students really aren't excited about coming to my class. What can I do to make them want to really run in the door each class period? Maybe, you know, this teacher's starting by reviewing homework every single time. And while that's an important practice to review learning, maybe that's not really getting kids anticipating the class in a way that's productive. Maybe, you know, they need to do something hands-on, something exciting. So they are able to look at each component of this. So I think that's an important place for us to focus, is that it can really be this data coach for teaching and learning. It's laser focused on that teaching and learning. So let's go into a little bit more of what each of these means. So a dimension represents one key aspect of the engagement, right? This one focuses on cognitive engagement. So you can see it has 7 spokes. Each of these represents a question on the survey. We'll show you how that connects on the next slide. But each of these is a coachable component of engagement in teacher practice, teacher mindset, or student perception of that learning process. So here's an example of what that looks like. Question to dimension. So this is our cognitive engagement dimension. We can see each of these questions lines up to one of the spokes of the dimension. So for example, my teacher structures class in a way that keeps me interested, right? We can come over here and find that class structure spoke. My teacher encourages me to do my best, encourages effort. So each question that the students will respond to matches to one spoke of an engagement dimension. So here's what that looks like zoomed out. We've got these 4 dimensions: behavioral. Think about that's how students act in the learning environment. And that's often what we observe as the administrator in the room, as the coach in the room, as the teacher leader in the room, if it's a peer observation, right? How students are acting and interacting in the class environment. Cognitive is how they think about their learning. So how are they taking what they're learning? Are they getting feedback on their learning? Are they getting really pushed to put their best effort in? Emotional is how students feel about their learning. And instructional is, are they getting the right amount of instruction for them to feel engaged? So now that we understand how the tool is structured, that students respond to statements, each of these statements then comes over into this data visualization to show the different dimensions of these types of engagement. And then teachers, administrators can come in and see how students have reflected their experience in each of these dimensions. I'm not going to go too in depth. This is on our website if you want to play around with it. This is a mock-up demo. Brendan's going to show you the actual tool in a moment, but super simple. We love our tools for students to be able to understand them right away so that we can get the best possible data from them. So they select their class. They're able to drag and drop. A little different than the engagement index is we ask for comments for each of these. We found at Wellington that these comments really help us better give context to each dimension, and we get a little peek into what the students are thinking. We've worked really hard with them on what it means to give good feedback. They work in advisory on that, so it's not just like good exclamation point, but you know, when we end class and we don't really get to go over our homework, it makes homework a lot harder for us. Things like that. We're trying to help them understand. And that's a really great skill for them to develop on their own, is how to give effective and respectful feedback. As soon as the students are done, the data goes right into our dashboards that if you are a current partner, you know and understand, so that you can get a really high level view here, all the way down to dimensions and analysis. And when Brendan goes in, you'll see how this is a little different than our engagement index dashboard, and that it's pulling into individual components that you can rank and play with and really get in depth. So right now, I'm going to stop there. Before we go on to the demonstration, are there any questions we can answer? Anything I might have skipped over? Anything I went too fast on about the structure and purpose of dimensions? Brendan, you want to I'm going to stop sharing. You want to take it over and we can get into the tool. So as Brendan goes, he's going to start with the student tool, I believe. And then you can see how it's going to just look really familiar if you're a current client. And if you're a new client, pay attention to how simple and easy this is for your students to log in. And then he'll take you over to the dashboards where this data will immediately be populated so that not only you're used to getting your index data right away, but this really complex data will also be available in a really manageable, simple format. Okay, Brendan.
And I'll say, Sarah, we do have one quick question for you from Vicky. Do you provide guidance on the coaching piece that you mentioned as well? Coaching for helpful feedback.
Absolutely. So, Vicky, what we're building out right now, we realize this is actually something that a lot of us are looking for. We're building asynchronous classes over the summer that are going to have resources and tools, especially for the coaching piece. At the end of the webinar, once Brendan does his, I'll show you how we've coached at Wellington. And we've actually connected our index data to our dimensions data to get like some really interesting insights. But the coaching piece, I feel, is so, so important. So long story short, yes. And I'm actually an instructional coach by trade. So this is my this is my passion. So we are trying to provide as much coaching support as we can.
Awesome. All right. And then with that, we can jump into the live tool. So I do see, Josh, your question about the number of questions students answer. It's going to be customizable. So I'll show you what that looks like once we're in the tool. So you can see like you can have 500 questions, which would not be advisable, but you could have like 5 to 10. So we'll show you what that looks like and how you would actually set that up.
Yeah, and Josh,
so
at
I'm
Wellington,
going to, yeah,
we
please.
do all 40 at the same time, and they do it in their class over a 2-week time period. So they actually started today, and so they do 1 or 2 classes a day over, so it doesn't become too much. But how I showed you that dimensions at Wellington, the implementation is they do them all at once. We have a client who only does one wheel at a time, one dimension at a time. So it's like Brendan said, it's totally up how the school wants to do it.
All right, so what we're going to show you first is the student tool. So this is how the students actually come in to provide us feedback on their classrooms, like on the Dimensions tool. So for engagement index users, this is actually the same web URL that students go to complete dots. So they go to one website and they have one student ID and school code that they apply to everything. We also do support single sign-on through Clever, ClassLink, and through Veracross. So if you use any of those services, it's really straightforward to log in. But for us, we're going to log in with a student ID and with our Demonstration Academy school code. So when I sign in, I can see I have both surveys available to me. So we have the main engagement index, and then we have the engagement dimensions tool right here. So if you're a school that uses both of these, when a student logs in, they're able to select either survey if there's an open window. For us, we're going to go straight to course feedback survey. So you can see here, we are doing one class at a time when we're selecting for this. So this is why we'll say, hey, maybe on a Monday we'll do math, a Tuesday we'll do science. But you could have students just log back in and do all these in sequence if you'd like. So we'll just select our art class. And now you can see all of the dimension data that we have assigned for this class, for this collection. So right now we're just doing a small sample of just one dimension as we would consider it. But you could make this as many or as few questions as you'd like, and I'll show you what that process looks like in a moment. So students will be asked, to what extent do tests fairly represent the content of the course being my art class? And then I can answer this anywhere from 0 to 100, strongly disagree to agree. And then we'll do this for every question that we have. So how connected is the course to real world issues? Maybe a 60. How difficult is the course? Maybe I'll say it's really difficult. My project's really tough right now, and I'm really interested in the material. Then we can input text response to these questions that you're setting. So what's the most challenging part of the course? Could be, my current project, just be super generic. What would make it more relevant? If we could do, I don't know, political, something real world. So do something like this. Then when we're done, we can either save and exit. So just do this one class, one set of questions, or we can save and move on to another class. So we could go through course by course. So what we're going to do is save and exit. And so that shows how the dimension survey would work for just one class, one set of questions. Students log into the same place as they do for dots and use the same login info. So we're trying to make this really simple. You don't have to know new passwords or new URLs or anything. But I'd like to now show you what that data looks like once you have it. And so for this example, we're going to use live data from the Wellington School. So we don't share any school's data with anyone else, of course, but since we are the Wellington School, we don't mind sharing some of ours just for demonstration. So just like with the student tool, all of the data for the dimension survey is going to be in the same place that you go to get your dot data. So you can see where I'm logged in here on this dimensions dashboard. It sits right under our Wellington dashboard. So all of this is in the same place. You don't need a new user account, anything like that. So when we're looking at this data, we can see a lot of different things on our dashboard. So right now we're looking at data across the whole school. So this is just the aggregation of every student response to every dimension for every class. So we can see everything all across the whole school, and we can filter things by department, grade level, student gender, etc. I don't want to spend too much time here though, because I think there's cooler tools to look at. So next we're going to go to our dimension comparison. So this lets us get really deep into specific parts of the school that we want to dig into more. So say we want to look at, on our instructional design dimension, we want to compare, say, our English department to our math department. So we can have instructional design on both, same date ranges, and then apply these filters. Now we can see that there's a little bit of variation in what our departments look like on this graphic. So you can see our math scores a little higher on collaborative work here at 82 compared to 73 for the English department. But the English department is a bit higher on project-based learning, 79 compared to 74. So we can see those high-level looks across the school, whether we want to compare gender, grade level, individual courses, department, maybe periods of time. You want to see how the spring compares to the fall. So you can do all those comparisons there. But if we want to get even deeper into this data, we can come here to our dimension analysis page. So this will let us look really deeply at specific departments or specific grade levels in the school on a dimension by dimension level. So right now we have our instructional design dimension selected. So this is going to let us select individual questions that fall under that instructional design heading. So we can say, let's look at course material compared to collaborative work. So now, and we'll take that math filter off, now we can look at every class in the school compared on that collaborative work axis and that course material axis. So we're looking at students' responses on these questions and seeing where are we doing really well on collaborative work. Well, see, glass art is really strong on this. We can see dive sports nutrition is really strong on this. And where are we doing really well on course material? It's like book invisible. But you can also see places where we're doing not so hot, right? This college composition, I think it is, has low course material. So if we wanted to focus on moving things in the class, it would be, let's look at this course and course material. But we can also look at this by department or by teacher. So we can see academic services tends to be low on course material, maybe not a shocker, but our humanities department is really, really strong. So this lets us get really specific into classes, teachers, departments in the school, so we can see where they rate on every one of these dimensions that we want to look at. Now I want to jump over to the teacher tool to highlight the student comments, the actual text comments that they're giving, because I think that's the best place where we can show the value of that data. So again, if I'm a teacher, I just need to come over here to teacher dimensions right under my teacher dots. And what I'm going to do here is select for the winter collection, I believe. Here we are. So this is now one teacher's view of the dimension data within the tool. And this is what she would see if she's logged in. So this is a teacher's view of the data, but it also lets us look at specific data for the teacher. So we can see how we compare on all of our dimensions to the school average. So all of our classes together to the school average. But we can also see class by class how things look. So I can see how my 8-1 English class compares on behavioral engagement, cognitive, emotional, and we can do this for every class that we teach. But you'll notice here, we also have these comments available. So we provide the teachers with both the raw text comments, so we can see, hey, let's see what individual students are saying about instructional design in this class. But we also have a large language model, like a ChatGPT summary of those comments. So instead of having to read 5, 10, 15 comments from a student and trying to figure out, what they're trying to say, we give you this really nice summarization of what the students are saying using the LLM. So this gives teachers really specific feedback on how they can make changes in the realm of behavioral engagement, rather than just saying, here's the data, right? So we try to make this all just like dots, something that you can really dig into a lot and get a ton of information on, but also something that teachers don't have to spend hours and hours looking through. They have a really nice comment summary. They can look at their data by quadrant and see where they really want to focus, where they're really strong, where they're not so strong. So they're able to get a lot very quickly. So I do want to stop there and see if there's any questions about the data dashboards before I show you a little bit of the setup process that will get a little bit to your question, Josh, of how you can configure the amount of questions. So any questions just about this before we move on?
Brendan, Vicky asked, and I think you will show this a little bit when you show the setup. Can you ask different questions for different courses?
That's a really good question. So my understanding, and actually, John, you're here, so you might be able to help clarify. I believe that the questions are going to be global per class or per collection. So you'll assign a series of questions to a collection and then classes to that collection. So you won't be able to ask a specific question for a specific course, but you can set different collections that only have, maybe we'll only do math on Monday and we'll have a specific set of questions for math. Maybe we'll only do science on Tuesday and we'll do that. So there are ways you can fine tune this.
Brendan, next question for dashboard viewing. How do the various permissions work? Are there various permissions for academic dean, teacher, department chair? How do we set that up so that everyone can get what they need?
Yeah, so at present, the permission sets are going to be teacher and admin. So you have administrators who should be able to see everything in the school. You have teachers that are able to see only their own data. And then we have groups that allow, say, a department chair to see a subset of teachers in the tool. So, you can have one user be able to access X many teachers. We are looking at ways of being more specific with our permission sets. So you could set up like just a grade level dean where you can only see ninth grade or what have you. But that's going to be a future feature.
Awesome. Those are the questions for now. Thanks, Brendan.
Awesome. All right, so now let's get quickly into the setup. And I'm going to go really quickly through this because I know I tend to take a lot of time. I get excited about this sort of thing. So we're going to go to our demonstration school and show you what that setup looks like. So firstly, in school admin, we'll go to manage dimensions. And this is where we can create those different questions that we want to ask. So you can either import dimensions that we've created at the Wellington School and vetted to make sure they're useful, valuable questions, or you can create your own. So it's very easy to say add a dimension. So here I'm going to click this and we now have a new master dimension. We can make this anything that we want it to be. So we can change the name, the description, the rating question. We can add a free-form text box to it if we'd like. So you can make any amount of questions that you want here. And then if we select this use children box, that means that we can now create sub-questions to that dimension. So as an example, under challenge, we have difficulty, assessments, interest, connection. So you can make any number of these sub-questions to a dimension that you'd like to do. And then to add those, you would just click right here, and we now have a sub-dimension on that. So you can create as many of these custom questions as you want. Like there's really no limit. You can see in this example, we just have, these 3 higher level dimensions that just have, I think there's 5 total questions beneath them. At Wellington, we have, what is it, Sarah, like 30, 40 questions in our survey. So you can really tailor.
Yeah, we have 4 dimensions and about 8 questions for each. And the kids, we have found they've been giving good feedback on it. So it felt like a lot at first, but I feel like the kids are really giving us quality feedback. So we're pleased with that. But you can, if you are like, hey, you know what, I think my students can handle a max of 8 questions, like this can be that. We really want it to be the tool that works for you, so we can customize however you need.
Right, exactly. So you can make this be 1 question, you can make it be 100, you can really customize it to what you're trying to ask, how much time you want to spend, like just make it work specifically for your use case. So once we've created these dimensions or imported the questions that we want to import from Wellington, we can then assign these to a collection that will allow students to actually take the survey. Now, the nice thing about this is that the dimensions tool speaks directly to the same database that the engagement index does. So any data that you've already rostered over using either CSV upload or your Veracross API or Clever API or ClassLink API is already in there. So you don't need to upload any new data. We already can schedule these classes for you. And to do that, we'll go to Manage Dimension Collection. And so here we can create a new collection window and then assign classes to it. So if I click new collection, I have a new collection window come up. We could call this May collection. We can add a set of dimensions that we want to add to it. So I'll add all of our challenge dimensions here. We'll click save. And now I can schedule classes to it just by clicking manage classes. And then I have my full list of classes, the same ones I have for engagement index. If I want to schedule all of them, I just click schedule all. And then when I save, we're good to go. So we've now just created a new collection. Students will be able to log in, answer any of these challenge questions for any of the classes that we've put on the schedule. So the really cool thing about this is, especially if you're already an engagement index customer, setting this up is, if you know your questions, it takes 5-10 minutes just to type them all in and then set up your collection. We're always happy to work with you to figure out good questions. And if you're totally new to the whole service, setting up the API to pull over your roster data, 15-20 minutes, and then setting up the dimensions. Like, we really try to make this really quick and simple so you can go from nothing to collecting this data in a day or a week. So I've gone on too long, so I'd like to stop and see if you all have any questions, and then we can let Sarah get back to it.
I know that was great. I think the simplicity, I think, is just awesome, right? So instead of jumping back into our slide deck, we were just going to talk a little bit about coaching. If that is of interest to you, we can connect. This time in schools is so busy. The main takeaway from that is how we have set up the dimensions is, especially if you use the Wellington questions as you bring them over, are meant to be really coachable. So I will show you just a quick slide, and then we'll take kind of final questions. Oops. I should share. That would help us, wouldn't it? All right. So here's an example of what that looks like, right? So if we have, this is some sample data, right? So this is a teacher, this is that cognitive engagement dimension, right? And we can see they are very strong in a lot of these places, right near the school average. Where they have got some growth is in class structure and teacher clarity. So with some goal setting, some coachable dimension strategy. So how would we build up class structure? How could we make sure the kids know what they're learning and why they're learning it? Once we put that into place and we implement, right, then you can see this teacher was able to make, and this is Wellington data. So this teacher was able to make some really good progress with that coaching. So we want each of these dimensions to be something that either a division head, instructional coach, teacher leader, peer could come in and have a conversation so that you could work through kind of our Wellington engagement reflection piece so that you could quickly get into the implementation and action to make progress on these. So we want everything to be coachable. In my instructional coaching practice, I have found that our teachers do the best when they feel like it's something in their control. If the data feels like it's out of their control, that's where we can lose buy-in. That's where we can start to have teachers question the value of the tool. But when it's relevant to their practice, when it's personalized to them, and when it's coachable, that's when teachers have the most autonomy and agency. So let's pause here. Josh, I see we've got a question from you. I do want to honor our time. We're at 1. We will stay on for a little bit longer, but let's answer these questions in the chat. How does confidentiality work? Brendan, this is Brendan's specialty. Students sign in, who sees what? Brendan, talk through our privacy settings, and our commitment to student safety, and of course, teacher, their data and their cannot find the word today.
Sure.
We need to make sure that we're not oversharing their data as well.
Yeah, so the student IDs are only going to be viewable by admin level users. So as a teacher, if a teacher logs in, they're not going to be able to see which student placed which piece of feedback or even left which comment, which, when we showed that live, you would see that we can see that list of raw comments, but we can't see who said them, what ID, what name, any of that information. So from the teacher's perspective, students are anonymous, but the administrators are able to look at the list of comments to see who said what and who left which piece of feedback. There's also a really nice tool in here specifically for your concerning responses, where the administration can look at every comment. They can delete comments that are unnecessary or rude or just not useful. They can edit comments out that, maybe there's like a swear word or something they want to edit out from the page. Or if there's something that they really need to follow up on, they can see that comment and then follow up with the student. So admin level can't see that information. That's also a really nice feature of the large language model summary, is that from the teacher's perspective, you can say, hey, don't show them raw comments at all. Only show them that summary that ignores, useless or rude comments and just provides constructive information. And there is, I believe, tracking for completion. So we can see who actually completed the survey, who we need to follow up with. Like you can see all that in the tool as well.
Yeah, and the student, having the student name associated with the comment was really helpful. We switched how we were doing that at Wellington, and our middle school principal reached out to me one day and was like, "Hey, Sarah, I am concerned about a student. Can you pull their comments?" We were able to just look at that single set of comments, and that was really helpful to that div head and his work with that student. So while it's a little bit of adjustment for the students for them to know that it's not completely anonymous, it's actually a really good student safety protection, especially if a student were to share something that we would want to act on immediately, whether for their own safety or the safety of their peers. That allows us to have access to that data really, really quickly to make sure that we're supporting students 100% and just making sure that student safety is always the priority.
And I'll say as well, just a very technical asterisk is that when you share data with us, Josh, that you do need to tag it with a student ID number. The name of the student you can upload if you'd like, but that is optional. So if you wanted to keep that out of our database, that you're able to do that as well. But that's like super technical privacy stuff.
All right. Any more questions for today? I don't see any dots in the chat. If you do, we are always here. We are happy to jump on a call. We can talk through customization versus kind of what I call the Wellington way, which are around those 4 areas. But we want this tool to be really useful in your toolbox for teacher growth. And we are just here for you. So, Josh, also very good to see you. Josh and I, we go way back. Josh, I'm not going to make it to Atlas this year, but you can see if you're going to Atlas, Eliza and Lewis are presenting on Monday. So you can meet our head of school if you are going to Columbus. All right. Thank you so much. It's a joy to always be with you, and we are here if you need anything. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Vicki. Great to have you all.